Everyone went on the cruise. Everyone except me. My mom even posted a caption that said, "Surrounded by those who matter most." I didn't comment. I didn't react. I just sat there quietly. 2 weeks later, they were at my door, asking for help with property taxes. And all I said back was, "Looks like the ones who matter most should handle it." Dad yelled. Mom slammed the door. And I stood there realizing it still affects me. I used to believe eventually it would stop hurting. That at some point, I'd accept being the outsider in my own family. But it never fades. Not when every year they travel somewhere tropical like they're starring in a commercial for a perfect family I'm never included in. And this wasn't a one-time thing. Not even the second time. This was year 3. A full week-long Caribbean cruise, balcony rooms, champagne in hot tubs, parasailing in St. Thomas. The entire package. And once again, I found out the same way I always do, through someone else's social post. This time, it was Kelsey. A boomerang of her and Tyler dancing by the pool, fruity drinks in hand. I scrolled through all her uploads, even though I knew it would sting. The group photo hit the hardest. All of them on the deck, in matching blue shirts that said Miller Family Cruise 2025. And of course, the classic caption from my mother, "Surrounded by those who matter most." I stared at it for a minute before closing the app. It's not even about the trip itself anymore. It's what it represents. I'm not an afterthought. I'm not a thought at all. They don't consider me. They don't even try to include me. And pretending I'm okay with that is exhausting, especially when I see how different other families operate. My best friend calls her mom daily. My coworker's brother drives hours just to take her to dinner. Even my ex's family insisted I still come to Thanksgiving after we broke up. Meanwhile, mine boards cruise ships like I never existed. I work at a bookstore and freelance on the side. I like my life. But compared to my sister, the lawyer, and my brother who works in tech, in my parents' eyes, I'm the one who never impresses, never contributes, never counts. So I didn't say anything. I didn't text anyone. I didn't like or comment on anything. I just went to work, greeted customers, and ate dinner alone like I always do. 2 weeks later, I was at home in sweatpants, watching reruns, when I heard tires outside. I looked through the window and saw my mom's white SUV. She was holding a basket. Dad was behind her with his hands in his pockets, like we were about to have a friendly chat. I opened the door. I didn't invite them in, but they walked inside anyway. The basket had zucchini bread in it, which they already know I don't like. They made small talk, asked about work, commented on the house. Then my dad cleared his throat and said there were unexpected expenses this year. Property taxes were higher than they planned. They were hoping I could help contribute, just a little. I didn't hesitate at all. I said, "Looks like the ones who matter most should handle it." Dad looked stunned. Mom gave me the look where she acts confused rather than upset. She said she didn't understand where this reaction was coming from. I just opened the front door again and stood there, waiting. She didn't argue. She walked out and slammed the door behind her. I stayed in the silence afterward. Not angry, not guilty, just done. At least that's what I believed. Then a week later, I got an invitation. A family barbecue. No explanation. Everyone would be there, including my cousin, who hasn't shown up to anything in years. It felt like bait, but for the first time in a long time, I actually felt like going. I considered turning around 3 separate times while driving there. First in highway traffic, then again at the gas station, when I saw a dad and his teenage daughter laughing about some snack aisle joke. And a third time when I was a few blocks from the house, remembering exactly how these events always played out. But I didn't turn around. I parked a little down the street and stared at their perfectly maintained yard. The grill smoke drifting into the air, the sound of people laughing. If you didn't know better, it would look like a warm, happy family gathering. I walked through the side gate. No one noticed at first, which gave me a moment to observe. Tyler was tossing a football with a younger cousin. Kelsey was showing off her boyfriend, designer sunglasses, expensive watch. Mom was loudly laughing by the grill, holding a glass of wine. Dad was setting up cornhole with his normal, too-good-to-play attitude. And then someone finally spotted me. Aunt Mara was the first to react. She gasped like I'd suddenly returned from being missing. Then she pulled others toward me. Suddenly, I was surrounded by faces I hadn't seen in over a year. Everyone acted normal, like none of the previous 3 years happened. Like they didn't all go on a cruise without me. Like they hadn't come to my house asking for money and leave angry when I didn't agree. Mom approached with a politician-style smile. She hugged me lightly and said I looked refreshed, which is her word when she wants to avoid saying tired or older. I asked what she meant. She waved it off. The next 20 minutes were neutral but forced. I took a drink, ate a small plate of food. Kelsey bragged about closing a major deal. People asked what I'd been doing. I told them I was still working in books. They responded with that polite, empty nod people give when they don't know how to value someone's work. I started thinking I could probably leave early without anyone making it a problem. Then my mom tapped her glass with a fork. Everyone stopped and turned toward her like she was giving a toast at a wedding. She thanked everyone for coming. She said being together mattered. Then she talked about hard times, making her appreciate people who step up. She looked directly at Tyler, then at Kelsey, and said she was grateful for kids who show up and help, without needing to be asked twice. That changed everything instantly. People shifted, glanced around, uncomfortable. Kelsey leaned over and asked if I was still freelancing or whatever it is you do. Then Dad added that he hoped I'd reconsider the taxes, again emphasizing that everyone else had contributed. That was it. That was the moment I stood up, calm, not emotional. I said they don't get to treat me like family only when it benefits them. They made it very clear for years that I wasn't part of this. They had no problem excluding me from trips, but expected me to help financially. I told them it was selfish. The entire yard went silent. Mom stared at me confused. She said I was twisting things, being dramatic, misinterpreting everything. Dad said this wasn't the time or place. Kelsey rolled her eyes and told me I've always had a chip on my shoulder. And then, unexpectedly, Tyler stood up. He said I was right. He said he'd noticed it too, that I was constantly left out, that it wasn't okay. Mom froze. Then she told Tyler he didn't understand. There were reasons I wasn't invited to the trips, that I didn't fit in. I didn't wait for anything else. I grabbed my bag and walked out through the side gate. Tyler followed. He apologized. He said he should have spoken up sooner. I told him his support mattered more than he realized. I got in my car and drove home, leaving their backyard behind in uncomfortable silence. Tyler called the next morning. Not a text, not a vague "you good" message. A direct phone call. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. He immediately said he wanted to check on me, and that he'd been thinking about what I said. He told me I wasn't wrong. I told him I wasn't surprised no one else reached out. He said I shouldn't expect them to. After I left, Mom cried for 20 minutes. Dad said I was intentionally creating drama, and Kelsey was furious. She told Tyler I was jealous and bitter. She sent him long messages trying to convince him I had twisted the narrative. He didn't reply to her. We talked about growing up, how every holiday always had the same silent pattern. Tyler was the golden child. Kelsey was the pride. I was tolerated, the background person. Quiet, independent. There, but not really valued. He said he never realized how obvious it was until that night. Hearing him acknowledge it without denying or minimizing it meant more than he knew. 2 weeks passed after the barbecue. Not one word from either parent, which stood out considering how quickly they approached me when they needed money. Then an email arrived from Mom. Long, carefully written. You could tell she edited it multiple times. She apologized if I felt excluded. She said she didn't realize the cruise photos would hurt me. She said it was never their intention to make me feel less important. And then she added the real reason she reached out. Their finances were strained. The property taxes were becoming a serious issue. They were looking into options. I didn't respond. A few days later, she sent a text. She wanted to have dinner, just me, her, and Dad. She said no pressure, just a conversation. I left the message unread. Then she called. I let it go to voicemail. She sounded emotional and said she wanted things to feel whole again. She mentioned hard times again. I told Tyler about it. He sighed and said it probably wasn't about mending anything. It was about the house situation. They were overwhelmed and wanted security, not reconciliation. I still ignored the dinner invite. That's when she escalated and sent a group text to the entire family. They were planning another barbecue, a bigger one. Suddenly, the family that never included me was extremely interested in togetherness. At the bottom, she added a line directly aimed at me. Hope you'll come, Joyce. We'd love to see you. Tyler called that same day. He said he would only go if I did. He had no interest in another staged family performance unless I wanted him present. I considered ignoring it again, but I didn't want to stay away this time. Not to fix anything, not to smooth anything over. I wanted them to see me, the version they never acknowledged. The version who no longer needed anything from them. The version who was done playing along. I told Tyler I would go, and this time, I wasn't going to maintain peace. I was going to end the illusion of it. I arrived about 15 minutes late on purpose, just enough to keep them unsure if I was actually going to show. The backyard looked almost identical to the last time. Same music, same string lights, same half-deflated balloon banner hanging on the fence. But the atmosphere felt forced. Everyone was smiling too hard, talking too loudly, like they'd rehearsed it. Tyler spotted me first. He walked up casually and said it was good to see me. I just replied, let's see how long this stays peaceful. Mom was at the grill talking to someone I didn't recognize. When she noticed me, she blinked, like she wasn't sure I was real for a second. Then she smiled, like she'd been waiting for this moment. I didn't hug her. I just said sure when she said she was glad I could make it. The next hour was small talk and overcompensation. People I hadn't spoken to in years acted overly warm. Aunt Mara talked endlessly about her hip surgery. Kelsey's boyfriend looked uncomfortable, like he didn't remember if I was the bookstore sibling or the one who moved states. Kelsey stayed distant, laughing loudly, talking about her career win, performing like she always did. Then, after everyone finished eating, Dad tapped his beer bottle. He said they had an announcement. Mom stood beside him, holding his arm. Dad told everyone they'd decided to sell the house. Mom added that the timing was right, and they'd been considering it for a while. And then she looked directly at me and said, with this gracious, staged tone, that I had offered to help with some of the legal and closing costs, and that it meant so much. I didn't react at first. Then I just laughed and said clearly that it was not true. Mom looked stunned. She insisted I had agreed. I told everyone they came to my house, I said no, and now they were trying to announce a false version of it publicly. Kelsey said I was being cruel, that I should help because they were under stress. I told her you'd helped erase me for years. Being excluded wasn't normal. Lying about money wasn't acceptable. Tyler stepped in. He said he had no idea they were selling the house, and no idea they told people I was helping financially. And he wasn't okay with it. That was the breaking point. Dad tried to call it miscommunication. Mom stood perfectly still, smiling, but her hands were shaking. I said I was done. I showed up. That was enough. I grabbed my bag and left through the side gate. Tyler followed me. At my car, he asked if I wanted to get a milkshake. Something simple. Something not connected to any of this. So we got milkshakes. We sat in the parking lot like kids again, except this time it was two adults finally realizing where the real boundary had to be. For the first time, I didn't care what my parents thought. I didn't care if there were group chat messages or dramatic speeches afterward. I was done letting them write my part in their family script. A few weeks later, Mom collapsed at home and was taken to the hospital. Tyler called me that night. His voice was shaky, not dramatic, just genuinely off balance. He said Mom fainted in the kitchen. Dad panicked. Ambulance came. They were running heart tests overnight. He said he didn't know if I wanted to hear about it, but he felt like he needed to tell me anyway. When I walked into the hospital waiting area, Dad looked surprised I showed up at all. Kelsey didn't look at me. She was scrolling her phone aggressively, jaw tight, like she was angry that reality chose tonight to not support her version of the story. Tyler sat next to me, silent for a minute. Then he said, "She asked for you." At first I thought he meant metaphorically, but when he clarified, I felt something hit in this strange, quiet way. Mom specifically asked if I was coming. Me, the one who wasn't supposed to matter, the one they always assumed would be fine on her own. A nurse came out eventually and told us she'd stabilized. Dehydration, stress, untreated blood pressure. They wanted her monitored, but she wasn't dying. Just at a point where pretending things were fine wasn't sustainable anymore. We went inside when they allowed 2 visitors at a time. I went in with Tyler. Mom looked smaller than I remembered, tired. She apologized again, but this time not in that corporate email way. Not sorry if you felt that way. She just said she should have treated me better, that she always assumed I didn't need them like the others did, that it was easier to pretend things were neutral than confront that she had actually made choices, not accidents, choices that put me last. I told her I didn't hate her. I just stopped needing her approval years ago. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I know." When we walked back out, Kelsey immediately asked if Mom said anything about the house. It was instinct, not malicious, just deeply self-centered habit. And Tyler, for the first time in our entire lives, told her to stop talking about money in front of Dad. He said they needed to focus on taking care of Mom, not extracting leverage from the situation. Kelsey didn't say anything after that. She just sat there and quietly cried. And that moment was the first time I realized how much of our entire family dynamic was built around pretending there wasn't a hierarchy. That night in the parking lot, Tyler asked if I thought things were going to change now. I told him I wasn't expecting a perfect reconciliation. I wasn't expecting equal, but I wasn't going to shrink myself into the role they were comfortable with anymore. He nodded, and he said, "I'll back you now, no matter what." And in a strange way, that was the most healing thing that happened through all of this. Not my parents changing, but my sibling finally seeing me clearly. After everything, people think the resolution is the hospital scene. It wasn't. She didn't suddenly become a new person. Dad didn't suddenly reevaluate his priorities. Kelsey didn't suddenly self-reflect into accountability. Life is not that tightly packaged. Mom got discharged. She's trying now, in awkward, clumsy, late ways, but trying. Dad is quieter around me, more careful with his tone. Kelsey keeps distance, not out of hate, but because she genuinely doesn't know how to talk to me without defaulting to competition or hierarchy. And I'm not angry anymore, because I stopped needing them to be anything other than what they are. The biggest shift was internal. I used to think family was something you protected at all costs, even at the cost of yourself. That loyalty was supposed to look like holding your tongue so everyone else could stay comfortable. That being the quiet, stable one meant sacrificing parts of yourself so everyone else could stay intact. But the truth is, sometimes you have to end the version of the story where you're the afterthought, before anyone else ever chooses to rewrite it. I didn't cut them off. I didn't disappear. I didn't burn the bridge. I just stopped setting myself on fire to keep it standing. And weirdly, that was what finally let Tyler actually stand next to me, not above me, not in front of me, but beside me. People online always say, blood is thicker than water, but no one finishes the original proverb. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. Meaning, the bonds you choose are stronger than the ones you're simply born into. I didn't choose my parents, but I chose myself. And choosing myself is what finally made space for a real relationship with my brother to exist. That's the real ending. Not reconciliation. Alignment. And honestly, that's enough.